Hey guys, Solid here. Hope you're all doing well and welcome back to the monthly adventure news wrap up. We've got plenty to get through this month. Aprilia have released new details on the Tuareg or Tuareg 660. Yes, I still can't pronounce it. Royal Enfield have announced a Scrambler version of the Himalayan, so that's exciting. I wanted to talk about why we haven't heard any new news on the KTM 490 Adventure and the Husqvarna Norden 501, as well as talking about the new MX and Enduro range from Triumph. So those stories and more straight after the intro. So the first news item of the day is the V-Strom 650 is getting bold new colors. As Dr. Cox and Scrub said, ladies and gentlemen, let me present to you Man Not Caring. So there's new specs out for the 660 from Aprilia and they look like pretty decent specifications. So I'll go through them now. They're saying the bike should make 80 horsepower, 51.6 foot-pound of torque, so that's pretty decent. We're talking F800 GS kind of territory for the power, a little bit less, but a little bit more than the Tenere 700. We've also got 187 kilograms dry. That really pisses me off when manufacturers give the dry weight. I do not care. I'm not riding my bike around without petrol, fuel, and coolant in it. Put the damn wet weight figures out there. I know it might scare people off a bit, but giving us the reality of what the bike is going to feel like picking it up in day-to-day riding off-road is really important. So the fact they put 187 dry is a little bit irritating. It does allow them to show off their weight weenie a little bit. So a little bit annoyed about that, but it is what it is. So we've got 43mm adjustable USD forks. We've got a front suspension and rear suspension travel of 240mm, and ground clearance is also stated the same. So 240mm of ground clearance, which is certainly respectable for an adventure bike. So nice job there, Aprilia. The other big news is the fuel capacity, of course. That's always very important in an adventure bike, and this one is 18 liters. It's not massively huge, but it's also not too small. I think it's right in that sweet spot. Fuel consumption remains to be seen, but I think it should be fairly decent. And I think what's most clear about these specifications is this is going to be a pretty close contender to the Tenere 700. Of course, you are going to have the general complaints that usually come flying at Italian motorcycles with reliability, ease of getting parts, and what's the biggest problem with Aprilia here in Australia is basically the dealership experience is where everything falls down here. I've got a lot of people telling me here in Australia in the comment section that they love Aprilias, but they just don't like the dealership experience. Those are some of the challenges, but not looking at all those things, just at the bike itself, it is stacking up to be pretty stiff competition to the Tenere 700. Obviously, this will probably be a little bit more given Aprilia's premium branding, but I really think it's great that we've got a proper middleweight size motorcycle actually in the middleweight category for once. All these bikes, 850, 950 cc still being called middleweight. I think that's a bit ridiculous. So having what I term true middleweights, that is that 600 to 800 cc, it is good to see bikes coming back to being a little bit lighter. Whichever way you look at it, more competition is better for us. It means that the brands have to get more competitive and offer us more values. So in my previous episode, I talked about Royal Enfield currently in development of two new motorcycles based off the parallel twin 650s. So they're developing an Adventure Tourer and a Tourer. So one will be completely road only, and the Adventure Tourer they've stated will have a little bit of off-road capability, but it'll be nowhere near as off-road capable as the current Himalayan. They've now stated that they're currently developing a Scrambler off the Himalayan model. So that Scram name is actually for the Scrambler version of the Himalayan, which has disappointed me a little bit. I was actually hoping for a Scrambler based off the 650 parallel twin, but what we do know is that this Scram that they're calling it will have a 19-inch wheel instead of a 21. I think that's a great move for the road. It gives you far more performance in the settings you will be riding it in. It will also have the navigation system that comes on the Meteor 350, which I think is pretty great, and it will also be released in 2022. So unlike the Adventure Tourer and the Tourer, Cemera from the 650 parallel twins, we'll actually see this bike in the next century. Now, what concerns me is the image that came with this article. Hopefully this is just a rendering or someone's own home modification. But if this is what the Scram looks like from Royal Enfield and it was my bike, I'd be taking it around the shed and putting two in the back of its head and putting it out of its misery, because currently as it looks, it's not too pretty to my eyes. But that is subjective. Maybe it looks good to you guys. I'd love to know your thoughts. I am fairly confident that it will look good and this isn't the final product, because let's face it, Royal Enfield have dealt in making classic motorcycles ever since they were just new motorcycles. So they know how to make a good looking retro classic. So hopefully they get their stuff together and it does come out looking a little more flash than this, especially since all our expectations have been lifted quite a lot with the Interceptor and the GTs. Let me know your thoughts about all of the new models coming from Royal Enfield. The next topic I wanted to talk about is Triumph's MX and Enduro bikes. Triumph has announced that they're moving wholeheartedly into the MX and Enduro scene. And the biggest question that's been on everyone's minds and was in the comment section quite a lot is, which angle are Triumph gonna go here? Are they gonna go with more entry-level, budget-orientated MX and Enduro bikes? Or are they gonna go full premium and try and compete with Husqvarna, KTM, Beta, all those kinds of motorcycles? There's a few articles that have stated that Triumph are definitely going to the premium side of it. So that on one hand really makes me think that these will be premium products. And that makes sense because that's what Triumph have built their name on. They're a premium brand. They've almost always, for their models, got Brembos, Öhlins, all that kind of shiny goodness. So I don't think it's a big leap to expect the same when they move into the MX and Enduro world. Whether they pull it off or not is a completely different argument, but what they will offer us is premium stuff. So this will be, at least with the product, it will be a competitor to Husqvarna, KTM, all that kind of stuff. This is also the sentiment from people within the industry that I know. I think Triumph can really do this. They're no stranger to off-road. They used to race off-road way back in the day, so I'm sure they can get back up to speed. They already have plenty of access and relationships with big brands that are important to have in the off-road world. So I expect them to be pretty great out of the package. The question is the price. As we all know, Triumphs aren't cheap, so I would expect KTM, Husqvarna prices at least for these Triumphs. The big question we all have is, will they be good and will they be reliable being all new? I for one am very excited about it. Whether they succeed or not immediately, it remains to be seen. But what gets me excited is this is a fresh new manufacturer moving into a segment that's got very stagnant, and it will be a very big breath of fresh air. So why haven't we heard any more news on this bike? Well, in the last video, I talked about the problems they were experiencing because of this health crisis. Basically, they were planning to build this bike in a brand new plant that had to be constructed in India in partnership with Bajaj. So the problem with this is the factory has been delayed in its construction. So it won't be online until 2023, a full year after the bike was planned to be released. Now, this was unforeseen by KTM because no one could have predicted the Black Swan event that happened in early 2020. So this is a real problem for KTM. What do they do here? Do they wait the extra year and still produce it in India? That's the route I think they should probably go if they were smart with their PR. The other scenario I talked about is a possibility of them heading over to China, because they do have a partnership with CF Moto. So they could ostensibly head over to China and produce the bike there. It will be very interesting to see what KTM do here. I'm also hoping that we will hear news over the new year. So anywhere from next month to February, I think we will hear more news. This is traditionally where we hear big updates from all the manufacturers. I think KTM are just trying to read the tea leaves as to the correct direction to go here, because I think either way they go does offer its complications. So it will be interesting to see which they choose. I'd love to know your thoughts. Should they head to China or should they stick in India? Thanks for sticking with me to the end. Don't forget to stay shiny side up, and I'll catch you in the next video, guys. See you later.